I'm Hugh and Hook.
I'm Bob Campbell.
And we're here to talk about the Real Review Wine Classification of Australia
and the Real Review Wine Classification of New Zealand.
Well, we've been working on this project for over a year now. It's exciting. We're finally about to launch our classification of Australian and New Zealand wines. I think it's going to make quite a splash.
Yeah, it's been a big project, and I know one we've all felt pretty passionate about and enjoyed putting together. It's a sort of fairly unique product, and I think it's going to make a difference to quality wines in New Zealand and in Australia, of course. Yeah.
In putting together our classification, we called in samples from many wineries to fill in gaps in our list and our tasting notes. And there were hundreds of wines, literally, that we called in older vintages of wines that we thought were worthy of the classification. And we did a number of excellent tastings which were fascinating to be a part of, and we involved the public in helping us clean up the bottles after we'd finished the official tasting. And I would really like to take this opportunity to thank those wineries who sent extra wine in, back vintages, which are quite often a bit scarce and a bit rare in some cases. They sent them in to us so that we could taste them and give them a rating and potentially include those wines in the classification. We thank them very much for their efforts there.
So how is the Real Review wine classification different from other classifications?
This is an independent guide for the best Australian wines that have been produced for at least 10 years. They have to have at least 10 years of reviews on our system, and they have to have demonstrated their quality over a period of time. So there are some wines on the classification that go back to the 1950s. So there are some wines with serious provenance there, but 10 years is the minimum. To denote this system, we have developed a 3-merit system of symbols. 3 merits is the highest classification, and that is indicated on a bottle, perhaps, by 3 M's.
3-merit wines are the highest, and they have an elite quality track record. They're iconic wines of Australia and New Zealand. Less than 0.5% of wines produced achieve that standing.
The 2-merit wines are signified by 2 M's, and the 1-merit wines by 1 M. So within the 3 categories there is a pyramid-shaped structure. So at the top there are only about 25 wines that get the 3 merits.
It's an exclusive club. A total of 385 wines achieved merit status in Australia, and 290 was the figure for New Zealand. Compared to the full range of wines, that is a very small percentage of high achievers.
I think the Real Review's classification is going to be very useful for the consumer, because people always want some guidance on which wines to buy. And if you're investing in wine or wanting to build a cellar, whether it's a business or just as a hobby, you want some guidance. So it'll be a simple way of people to identify the great wines of New Zealand, the great wines of Australia, go out and buy them, stash them away in the cellar. People are always looking for more guidance, more information to help them make their purchasing choices. I think it'll be a huge advantage for the consumer. And it's a very straightforward and simple system for people to recognise, and we'll be inviting, of course, the trade, the wine industry, to use those symbols on their packaging, on their promotional paraphernalia. Very simple: 1M, 2M, 3Ms, 3 merit, 1 merit, 2 merit. You've never had a classification in New Zealand, have you? Has there been much noise level, people suggesting there should be one?
It pops up from time to time, but as far as I know, there is no comprehensive, extensive classification of New Zealand wines. So it's obviously a big opportunity there, which we hopefully have filled.
Yeah, we've had several attempts at classifications in Australia, but the ones that I'm aware of have all been driven by merchants. In other words, usually auctioneers, based on market value, auction sales prices, the appreciation of value, that sort of thing. Ours is of course based just on the quality of the wines, which to me are the most exciting thing about it, because as you well know, so many classifications around the world are based on things that are not quite as, how should I put it, sensible. For example, Burgundy is based on the vineyards, Bordeaux is based on chateaus. I'm not aware of any that are based purely on quality of wines, are you?
It's interesting, probably the most well-known classification is the classification of the Medoc. People think of it as the Bordeaux classification, but it's the left bank really. And I can remember many years ago I bought a poster of that classification and hung it on my wall very proudly, and refer to it from time to time. But I'd like to think that perhaps our classification will be printed out and hung on walls as a unique reference point at some stage.
Oh, that would be very nice indeed. And of course the Bordeaux classification, drawn up in 1855, hasn't changed very much at all over the years, and this is, to me, one of the problems with these classifications. They tend to be set in stone, whereas ours is going to be much more fluid. It'll be re-evaluated every year, so people will have the opportunity of a wine being elevated every year, but it will take 4 years for a wine to drop out of it. So there will be some evenness of the playing field there. But once you're a first growth in Bordeaux, you seem to be first growth forever.
Yeah, that is a weakness of the system, and as you say, something that we've managed to work around.
Are you aware of the very first classification? I think probably informally it was in ancient Rome, Falernian and all that. I don't think it was ever drawn up on a stone tablet. It might have been, but the oldest classification that still exists somewhere, I was in Hungary for Tokai.
Oh really? That's interesting.
I believe so, but I think people have always been trying to classify wine, that we've always wanted throughout the history of wine to give an order of quality to wine. The ancient Romans, I do believe, were the first to try that. In those days, of course, it was just for the elite. They were the only ones who were interested in wine, let alone classifying wine. These days, it's for everybody, pretty much. There's going to be wines on our classification that are very, very affordable and which get high ratings.
Okay, what's next? We've got an exciting gala event early in the new year where we're going to have current and back vintages.
And we will be having some tasting events where you'll be able to taste the older vintages and younger vintages of some of the highly classified wines, which should be very exciting indeed. The classification is not static, it's a fluid thing. It is going to be reassessed every year, and there's the opportunity for wineries that are not already classified to move into the classification. So we would remind wineries to continue to send us their tasting samples so that we can keep current with their wines. That would be a great help for us, and if your wine is missing from our classification, then perhaps you should make sure we've tasted at least 10 vintages of it.
It's great talking with you, Ewan, and look forward to catching up next time.
Great talking to you too, Bob, and I look forward to catching up with you at the launch event. No doubt we'll be seeing each other then, and I'm really looking forward to 2023. It's going to be an exciting year.